Can you read or hear about insects or see insects without getting itchy? Because I can't, and this book didn't make it easy not to constantly scratch myself. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat, and today I would like to talk about These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which is also the book of the month for Diversities in It, founded by Holly Davis. This loose Romeo and Juliet retelling plays in Shanghai in 1926, where you can see the roaring 20s, very similar to the way they are depicted in America. Like burlesque clubs, music, everybody dressed up for a lot of things. Juliette has just returned from the US to try and take her place as the heiress of the Scarlet Gang. Roma is a possible heir for the White Flowers gang, whose boss is of Russian origin. He has to fight one of his cousins for it though, because it's less about bloodlines for the White Flowers and more about who's the favorite of the current boss. And Roma's father is not too fond of him at the moment. Soon after Juliette returns to Shanghai, a madness spreads where people go completely mental and tear out their own throats. And there are also rumors of a monster going around. The only option to prevent further deaths among the gangsters is actually working together, so Juliette and Roma team up begrudgingly because they have some backstory. They used to be a couple until Roma screwed Juliette over in one of the most horrific ways possible, and now there's a lot of bad blood between them. But for the sake of both of their gangs, they still have to work together. Overall, this was a decent read with a interesting setting. I'm not the greatest fan of Romeo and Juliet, so that might have taken away some of the enjoyment from me already, but it was overall decent. There are one or two things I can't talk about without putting a massive spoiler in this review. But maybe if I manage to be there, they will come up in the book discussion over on Holly Davis's channel. I will link this in the info card and below. So maybe I can point those out over there, but I will keep them out of here. So you can still enjoy the book without, any massive spoilers. I quite enjoyed the world building. You get a good picture of Shanghai and the disparity between both gangsters and rich foreigners who are essentially colonizing, and rich merchants and party members compared to virtually everybody else. Between communist revolts, the madness going around, and gangsters fighting, there is quite a bit of violence in the book. It's not too gruesome for the most part, although some of the scenes where people tear out their own throats are rather grueling. So the POVs are a bit wonky for me. It's not like third person limited really, although whenever you go into Juliet's head, you seem to stay there a lot longer than with any of the others. You get to see the world from the perspective of some of the side characters at some point, like Roma's buddies Marshall and Benedict, and then Juliet's cousin Kathleen and Rosalind. But you never stay with them for all that long. And then the part that struck me as really weird about it is that you barely get to see anything from Roma's perspective either. He is in there, but there's a big disparity, I think, between him and Juliette. So whenever you're in Juliette's mind, then she's constantly thinking about him and the betrayal in the past and how to deal with the current threat, even if it means working together. And then you go to Roma, and I think he worries at some point about his cousin for a tiny bit about Juliette, but whenever you're with him, it's like Juliette is just like, well, she exists over there and it doesn't do much for him. I found it a bit confusing. I expected more of the heartbreak and yearning from Roma's perspective as well, but there was none that I remember really. In comparison, Juliette harps on about the betrayal and how can I still like this guy quite a bit. There's a potential couple in this book that I can't say anything about because spoilers, but it was dangled in front of me and then it didn't happen until the end of the book. And I was like, I wanted to see that or read that. But no, didn't. Maybe the next one, because if you thought this was a single book, no, it's the beginning of a series. I thought it was a book in it by itself and the story would be done at the end, but no, it ends with to be continued. There were a couple of instances in the book where I was like, how was this supposed to work exactly? Some of it was just relating to the environment about pipes holding an impressive amount of weight. Then others related to the cause of the madness and another bit to the monster, but then again those would be spoilers. Just gonna say I put a couple of notes in my Kindle version. I was like, how? Why does this work? And if it works like this, then why did this and that before happen? So there are a couple of things where if you think about them too hard, they might throw you off a bit. Or I could just be very confused. It's totally a possibility. While I think Juliette is an interesting character, I'm not quite sure I like her. She seems like a very angry person at points. And then she's also swaying from one side to the other. In one instant she's like, yeah, I'm gonna murder everybody who's in the way, everything to protect the Scarlet Gang. And then in the next one he's like, oh my god, I have to shoot one person to save hundreds or thousands of others. And then she seems to be struggling with the concept. It's like, this doesn't fit the person that we've seen like just last chapter. So I don't know, maybe she just wasn't for me really. She's also described as the queen of socialites, but because you get to see it from her perspective most of the time, she seems just really pissed off with everybody. Including a certain guy, or particularly a certain guy who is fond of her and is trying to win her affections, and he never stood a chance, like not in the slightest, even if Roma wasn't in the picture, hell no. Because Juliette wasn't quite for me, I think, I prefer to follow some of the side characters like Benedict or even Roma's sister Elisa, which you only get to see for a really small part. But yeah, I could have done with more of the book coming from any of these guys. Instead, it's mostly Juliette. The book ends on quite the cliffhanger, and if, like me, you start the book thinking that it will be the end of the story, then you will be disappointed, because there's more to come. Which is not a bad thing, it's just if you go in with the expectation that it will be done, and it's not, it's a bit But yeah. Overall, I think it deserves this cat and this paw, because I couldn't quite decide between 3 and 4 stars. It's quite a good book, but it wasn't quite for me, I think. And there are a couple of areas where I think things could have been improved a little. But it is still worth a read. Unless you really detest Romeo and Juliet, then maybe not. It has to be said that unlike the original Romeo and Juliet, both Roma and Juliet have a more reasonable stance on considering suicide, which they don't. So thank you for that. And as a random side note, because I've seen on Goodreads or Twitter, there's actually a thread about people complaining about Roma's name because, oh, this can't mean anything but Rome and it's in Italian. And you just sit there like, you know, this doesn't play in Italy or Europe for that matter, and you know, just because a name means a certain thing in your area, that does not mean anything for the rest of the world. Yeah. Apparently the author had to fight quite a few people over this, and it just seems silly. Not everything is about Europe. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to help this channel out, and head over to Holly Davis's channel as well for the actual book club discussion. I will see you next week with another video. Bye guys!